Shadow of the Winter Moon by Cam Sinclair. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is the Shadow of the Winter Moon book review. This is book 1 of the Kraven Kronicles by Cam Sinclair. How cool is that series name? It is top notch. I really enjoyed it. This book was an entertaining mix of violence, conspiracies, and character-driven intrigue. I also believe this is a debut novel from an Aussie author, and I'll have the book linked down below, as well as any other reviews if I can find them, and if I'm the first, well, congratulations to me. Now, I can't give away too much of the plot because there is so much happening in this 350-page book that to go into too much detail will jump into spoiler territory. So this review is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to give you a very short synopsis of the plot, and my thoughts are going to be the bigger aspect of this particular video. As the reader, we start by following two young boys escaping their old life and heading into the city of Kraven. This is our introduction to the city itself. Huni and Toba act as our new eyes into this world, and they are sort of in the story intermittently. They play a part for a different sort of subplot in the book, but we don't see a whole lot of them going forward. But through the boys, we are introduced to this bustling city that is full of life and dangerous criminals and one hell of a secret that lies within the mind of Realm Hangs, who has been called a number of things in his lifetime, and most recently got kicked out of a very low establishment. But now that people want him, he's nowhere to be found. One man on the hunt is our main character, I would argue, and that is Sharek. After recently switching employers and is in hiding, his only role is now to seek out Realm Hangs and bring him in. His only clue to finding where Hangs is a puzzle-like box containing something ancient and powerful, an idol of a viper's head the size of an acorn. As Sharek and his child companion August uncover more than they bargained for, they find themselves on the other end of the hunt. Their violent path is filled with urgency, and they're not sure why. Will they be able to find the answers they seek before ending up trapped inside the conspiracies themselves? Only time will tell. That's all I've got for you for the plot. Just know you are jumping into a world full of violence and conspiracies and all those things we love in grim, dark novels. A couple of praises I want to give this book is the world itself. The world of Kraven was expansive and described as quite an impressive city. Throughout our journey in the book, we see many walks of life, from those downtrodden and beggars pissing away their monies at the local dive bars to those who come from money, and we have quite that class separation there. Sinclair has done a really good job of bringing life into this city, although we don't travel very much outside of it. The world that we're in is quite, rich and bustling, and there's never a moment when you feel like something isn't happening within this city. The hustle and bustle comes through the pages, and there is never a dull minute in Kraven. Another thing that I'd like to point out is our characters. There are quite a lot of them, and they could get a little bit convoluted along the way because their stories sort of intertwine quite quickly, but each character was unique and enjoyable on their own level, which I really do appreciate in a book of this nature, where you do have many POVs turning through the pages. Being able to identify each of those characters once they were sort of established was delightful, except for Jiro. So I really did not like Jiro, but I think that was the point of that character. Sometimes in a multi-POV book like this one is, you can dislike or be disinterested in a character enough that it takes away from the overall enjoyment of the book. That did not happen for me in this book. Each character had an intriguing enough story that I wanted to keep reading, no matter who the chapter was focusing on for that particular part of the story. This made it an entertaining read the entire way through. One character that really shone through here was that main protagonist I mentioned earlier, Sharek. He's a thug by nature. He's used to breaking down doors and collecting taxes to deliver them back to his boss. He is a take no BS BS kind of character. But even though he was quite thuggish in his execution, he was also shown as this multifaceted person. He came across as intelligent, he was able to think, even though he uses the bottle to deal with his, his own internal goings on, but he was shown as quite an intelligent person when the time called for it. He was also quite soft when it came to talking to his companion August, but not in a fatherly way, just in more of a this is my responsibility now kind of way, but I will give you some softness because you are in fact a child. And we also got to see his other relationships throughout the world, which also added to that world building. We had multiple people with multiple relationships all interwoven, and these relationships were multifaceted, from people that he liked, people he obviously had history with, and that was quite impressive to me as a reader, that this character was so involved in this particular city. It really did feel like he had built a life there, and we got to see the life that had been built through little snippets. He was Sharrock definitely gave me vibes of Logan Ninefingers, so if you did enjoy that character in the First Law trilogy, then you're probably going to enjoy this book, because Sharrock is our main player. My favourite part of this book was how dark the undertone of the city was, and the secrets that the city held. One of those things was a reptilian god-like creature, which was cult-like in its execution, and we got to see people being initiated into this cult, and some of the things that were happening within this particular species in this world was absolutely fascinating. These creatures also had interest in realm, so every sort of group we had within the book had interest in realm, and that was like the undertone throughout the whole thing. But you weren't really sure why all these people want realm hangs. That was never really sort of explored, and which kept the intrigue going throughout the entire thing, which was really cool. It was really interesting to see this process throughout the different groups, but this was my favorite one, and I really can't wait to know more about these creatures. I will just mention I ended up giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 because I do have a couple of small criticisms, and one would be the sheer amount of characters and POVs that we have within a 350 page book. This, coupled with very short chapters, I'm talking 2 to 3 minutes per chapter for a majority of the book, flitting between our major players, causes a little bit of confusion as to what was happening in any given moment. That being said, within the first page of a new chapter, I would be able to piece it together, but it could be quite jarring when going through this book quite quickly. Adding on to that, there was a lot happening in this book. There was just so much for the page count. We have a couple of cult-like factions. I got confused as to which one they were. I thought that the reptilian one was part of another one, and it took a while for my brain to realize that they were separate because they have similar motives, and they crossed over in my mind. But I had to remember that they were separate throughout the book. So just go in knowing there could be a little bit of confusion just with how much is going on. There were also several sexual scenes that I didn't know were completely necessary. There were a couple that did add to the story in my opinion, but there were also a few that I didn't know needed to be there. So if you are sensitive to that kind of content, also be aware going in. I would highly recommend checking trigger warnings before jumping into this book. There were a few from very early on. All in all, I had a good time with Shadow of the Winter Moon. I think this is absolutely a solid debut and an impressive debut to come in at 350 pages, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Cam Sinclair does next in both the Kraven Chronicles and maybe his further ventures in the written worlds. That was it from me. Have you read this one? Are you going to pick it up? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give it one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.